Hello, my name is Mary, and I'm 42 years old. I've been married to my husband, Charles, for a decade. We used to work together, but now we're in different branches of the same company. Charles is the epitome of professionalism, responsible, popular among his colleagues, and exuding confidence and ambition. He's always trying to project a strong, polished image. In contrast, I've always been more reserved and less conspicuous. That's why it surprised me when he, with his dynamic personality, started showing interest in me. After 3 years of dating, he proposed with a lavish bouquet of roses. I felt deeply cherished and accepted without hesitation, excited for our future together. But shortly after, Charles dropped a bombshell. He wanted us to live with his parents. I was initially hesitant, but he convinced me. He reassured me that his parents were eager to have us live with them, and that it would work out. I reluctantly agreed. Now, 8 years later, I'm still living with my in-laws in what was once only Charles's home, something I never expected when I dreamed of married life. My days begin early, often with my mother-in-law critiquing minor things, like how I clean the front door. Even though I make breakfast for the whole family, she constantly finds fault, leaving for work with a barrage of complaints. I'm left to scramble and fix everything, feeling more like a housekeeper than a wife. I wake up at 6 a.m. to handle the household chores and prepare meals. Even though my mother-in-law is home all day and doesn't help, after a long day at work, I return home to cook dinner, only to crash into bed, exhausted. This routine is relentless. I'm constantly drained. While my mother-in-law relaxes in the living room, enjoying the breakfast I made, she reminds me to keep the house spotless so the neighbors will think well of us. Despite the stress and the lack of support from my husband, this cycle never ends. My father-in-law remains indifferent, burying himself in his newspaper, oblivious to the tension. Living with my in-laws has taken a severe toll on me. I've lost weight, and even my menstrual cycle has stopped, preventing us from conceiving. My mother-in-law's role in this stress is obvious, yet I am blamed for our infertility. There was a time when I took pride in my appearance, but now I barely recognize the woman in the mirror. The constant criticism has pushed me into a deep depression. I've become so used to yielding to my mother-in-law's demands that I feel numb, lacking the energy to consider leaving. The pain deepened when I received the news that my father had passed away in an accident. It had been years since I last visited my family, as my husband and mother-in-law always disapproved whenever I mentioned it. I regretted not spending more time with him, so I knew I had to go to his funeral. When I told Charles and my mother-in-law that I needed to attend, they responded coldly, "We're not going. Let your family handle it." Their heartless dismissal left me trembling with anger and sorrow. All I could manage was a quiet "understood." The funeral was filled with mourners. My father was well-liked and self-employed, with many connections. Seeing my frail appearance, my mother, whom I hadn't seen in years, gasped, "Mary, what happened? You look so thin. Are you sick?" Her worry broke my heart. "No, Mom, I'm not sick," I reassured her, though I couldn't ignore how much I had changed. In a quiet moment, I confided in her about the struggles I faced at home, the constant bullying from my mother-in-law, and how it was slowly wearing me down. She listened with deep concern, her expression growing more somber. "I'm glad you're not physically ill, but this isn't good," she said. "Is this why you haven't visited in so long?" I nodded, and she handed me a piece of paper. "Take a look at this, then think carefully about your next steps." It was my father's will. He had always been prepared. As I read it, I stumbled upon a line that made my heart race: a $5 million inheritance. For a moment, the weight lifted from my shoulders. With this money, I could finally leave my in-laws and build my own life. The thought filled me with excitement and relief. Back at the in-laws' house, I continued my usual chores, but now my thoughts were consumed with the inheritance. No one else seemed to notice or care about the mess piling up around the house as I daydreamed of independence. Despite everything, my love for Charles still lingered, so one evening, when his parents had retired for the night, I decided it was time to have an open conversation with him. "There's something I need to talk about." I broke the silence, my voice steady but filled with tension. Charles looked at me, eager for the conversation. "It's about my father. I've come into an inheritance," I said, letting the words sink in. His eyes sparkled with curiosity. "How much?" he asked. $5 million, I revealed. Charles's expression shifted to one of both surprise and excitement. "That's incredible. Your father left you that much?" he exclaimed. Then his tone changed, growing more calculating. "We should talk about how to use this money." A wave of relief washed over me. Finally, It seemed like we could talk about the future, about us moving out, away from the constant pressure of living with my in-laws. But before I could suggest using the inheritance to build our own home, Charles threw me a curveball. "We need to transfer that money to my mom's account right away," he declared. I was stunned, wondering if he was joking. "Why would we do that? The inheritance is mine. It wouldn't be right to give it to your mom," I said, hoping he was just teasing. Charles's response was immediate and sharp, his hand slamming onto the table. "What are you talking about? A wife's money belongs to her mother-in-law," he snapped, his tone cold and final. I was taken aback, my confusion mounting. "I'm sorry, but I don't understand," I said, struggling to process what was happening. I had hoped we could talk about our future, but Charles wouldn't let me. He insisted over and over that my inheritance belonged to his mother. That night, I couldn't sleep. The next morning, while I was preparing breakfast, Charles and my mother-in-law confronted me, their faces twisted in anger. "Mary, I heard about it. You inherited $5 million, and you're refusing to give it to me? Who do you think you are?" my mother-in-law demanded. She was already aware of the inheritance through Charles and wasn't backing down. "Stop arguing and transfer it to my parents' account now. A daughter-in-law's money is our money," she insisted. The pressure was unbearable. Despite my objections, they didn't relent. I fell silent, too overwhelmed to respond. Charles then pulled out a piece of paper, his face hard with resolve. "You're getting carried away just because you've come into some money. I've been supporting you all these years. If you don't change your attitude, it's divorce," he threatened, thrusting the signed divorce papers toward me. "Take this and go back to your parents' house. If you apologize properly, I might reconsider," he added, his voice firm, devoid of empathy. As I held the divorce papers, a rush of memories hit me. Over the years, I had never truly received any support from him or his family. I had contributed equally to our living expenses, but the household chores and emotional labor had always fallen on me. They had treated me poorly, and now they were trying to take my father's inheritance. The pressure to surrender my father's legacy was immense, but the sudden offer of a fresh start, of leaving it all behind, felt like a chance to reclaim my life. I realized I held the power to shape my future. I wasn't going to give in. That evening, after a long day at work, I returned to my parents' house. "I'm home," I said, my voice soft but resolute. "Welcome back, my dear," my mother greeted me warmly. Despite everything, a home-cooked meal awaited me on the table. I sat down, savoring every bite, tears welling up as I felt the comfort of being cared for again. "Did you tell Charles about the inheritance?" my mother asked, her voice filled with concern. "Yes, and it caused quite a stir," I replied, recounting the demands and the tension that had followed. My mother listened in silence, her face softening with worry. "The inheritance is yours and yours alone. You deserve to decide your future," she comforted me gently as I cried, her words offering solace and strength. After a week of rest and reflection, I decided it was time to return to my in-laws' house. I had gathered the strength to face them once more. "Well, I'm heading back now. Take care," I said confidently, no longer afraid to stand my ground. Upon my return, my husband and mother-in-law confronted me immediately, their arms crossed in judgment. "Have you reflected on your behavior?" they demanded. "Yes, I apologize. Please let me stay in this house again," I said, my apology strategic but calm, my resolve unwavering. My mother-in-law's face lit up with anticipation. "Well then, hand over the inheritance right now," she ordered, her voice sharp. "The inheritance process is taking longer than expected. I haven't received it yet," I explained. "It's a complicated procedure, so it might take another 7 months or so." 7 months? That long? My mother-in-law's disappointment was palpable. "Well, fine," she huffed, reluctantly accepting my explanation. Charles and my mother-in-law seemed satisfied, convinced their plan was still on track. They had no idea of my resolve, and I didn't give them the inheritance. Yet, they continued to nag me about spending a week at my parents' house. "You're neglecting your duties as a wife. The house is a mess. Clean it up quickly," they insisted, as if nothing had changed. The disarray in the house after just a week was almost impressive, but I felt no more anger or frustration. I completed the tasks without letting it affect me emotionally. I had learned to detach. "My birthday's coming up, so I'll be leaving for a trip," my mother-in-law announced as always. "Make sure the house is clean when I return." "By the way, have you received the inheritance yet?" Charles asked, his question too convenient, as if it were an afterthought. It could be a great birthday present for my mom. Don't forget to transfer it to Mom's account before we get back, my mother-in-law added, her expectation clear. The timing of the birthday and the supposed arrival of the inheritance felt too perfect. As they left, I kept up a pleasant facade, bidding them a cheerful, "Take care." Once they were gone, I sprang into action. My plan was set, and I was ready to take control of my future. It sounds like you've gone through an incredible journey of self-discovery and liberation. You took a difficult and courageous step in breaking free from an oppressive situation, and the result was a transformation that not only gave you a sense of freedom but also a chance to build a life of your own, one filled with peace and happiness. Leaving behind the toxicity of your ex-husband and his family was no easy task, but it's clear you found the strength to stand your ground and assert your rights, especially with regard to your inheritance. You were able to create a space for yourself, literally and figuratively, in your new home, and the support of your mother provided a sense of comfort and stability that helped you heal. Your decision to seek legal advice and take proactive measures against harassment was also a wise one, ensuring that you could move forward without the constant shadow of their negativity hanging over you. The ripple effect of your actions, how it impacted your ex-husband's reputation and forced him to confront the consequences of his actions, feels like a form of justice, a reminder that one's choices can reverberate far beyond the immediate situation. It's truly inspiring how you've turned a painful chapter in your life into a springboard for personal growth and joy. Gardening, a new hobby that has rejuvenated both your body and spirit, symbolizes how you've cultivated new opportunities and a more fulfilling life. I'm glad to hear that you found peace, health, and happiness after breaking free from such a challenging situation. Your story serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of standing up for oneself, even when the odds seem stacked against us. You've not only reclaimed your inheritance, but also your peace of mind and future.